All right, so you're starting off a coaching session, and early on you ask the client, what would you like to achieve throughout our work together? Coaching is goal-oriented. The agenda is driven by what the client wants and needs, and so that's a great question to lead out with early on. So you ask the client, what would you like to achieve through our work together? And they respond, I don't want to lose my temper anymore. So my first question for you, you're on the spot here, did they answer your question? I don't want to be out of control with my temper anymore. Did they answer your question? Time's up. Answer is no, they did not answer your question because you asked them what do they want and they told you something that they don't want. So first thing to be clear is when you're asking the client what do you want to achieve through our work together, you want to be getting a towards value, not an away from value, although that away from value is useful information because it gives you a little bit of information about their present state from which you'll be guiding them towards their desired state. So now, second question for you. So they don't want to be out of control of their temper anymore. What is your next move? What would you do in this situation? I'm going to hold silence for a second here. And if you're watching this in a replay, feel free to press pause and take all the time you need to think about this. Now, most coach trainings and coaches or trainers that I'm aware of would tell you, well, you want to take that away from value and flip it to a towards value. So if the client is saying, I don't want to be out of control of my temper anymore, many coaches, if not most that I'm aware of, would probably say, well, then what is it that you would like to achieve? But I'm going to propose something a little bit different here today in this video that I encourage you to experiment with. And I think the distinction is if the away from value that the client shares with you is something that they don't want that's internal to them. So I don't want to be out of control of my emotions anymore is more about their internal state as opposed to something that would be more external and long-term goals such as I don't want to be poor anymore, I don't want to be out of shape anymore, I don't want to be alone in a relation, out of a relationship anymore. So I don't want to be out of control of my emotions anymore. I don't want to get angry anymore. I don't want to believe this anymore. Those are more internal away from values. And if you get an internal away from value, what I propose you do, and I'm gonna play a couple of scenarios with you here, would be before flipping it to figure out what their towards value is, what their goal is, to actually ground the conversation in that scenario. So let's play this out a little bit more and see how this plays out. So what would you like to achieve throughout our work together? Well, I don't want to be out of control with my temper anymore. So to ground that, we can ask a question like when, to get the context and the trigger basically. So when, where, with whom specifically do you get out of control with your emotions? Now, and again, we're just looking for a general grounded in space-time coordinates. When specifically, where specifically, with whom specifically do you get out of control with your temper? That's a valid question to ground the conversation. Let's say, for example, they say, with my spouse, with my partner, and we can even ask some more precision questions to gather what specifically the trigger is. Once we have that context, now we could flip it over to, okay, so right now you're losing control of your temper. We could also specify what that means a little bit in X scenario that we gathered some details about the context. Again, when, where, with whom are some great questions to ground that in an actual context with an actual trigger. So flip that over. So how would you want to respond in that scenario? When, where, with whom, same context, same trigger, same when, same where, same with whom. How would you like to respond in that scenario? What would be your outcome? So notice before flipping it from the away from to the towards, what I'm proposing here is to experiment with grounding the conversation there. Let's play this out the other way. So what would you like to achieve throughout our work together? I don't want to be out of control of my temper anymore. So, well, if you don't want that, what do you want? I want to be in control of my emotions. Well, when would you like that? Well, always. Always I would like that. And where would you like that? Well, pretty much always. And with whom? Well, always. So, and this is a real scenario I've experienced many times over my decade plus of coaching clients. If you've been coaching for some time, you may have run into this scenario yourself where, well, of course it's always they want to be in control of their emotion, but because we didn't ground it early on when they shared the problem with us, that internal problem of theirs, well, now we're going to have a more difficult time grounding it because we didn't gather the precise scenario that they were using as their frame of reference in the beginning, where they presented the problem to us. Because when the client presented the problem to us, remember, we asked them for a goal or an outcome or desire. They presented a problem to us which was vague, kind of general abstraction. Well, when they shared that with us, they had some particular frame of reference or a couple of frames of reference in their mind. But when we flipped it over to what they want, we may have lost touch with that, and now they want it everywhere. So anyways, I encourage you to experiment with when you ask the client what they want, they give you an away from value that's internal to them, to ground it before flipping it to a towards value, because if you try to ground it after, you may, and it's likely that you will lose touch with the actual scenario. And one of the keys of holding and facilitating transformational conversations in people is that they have to be grounded in experience. Of course, they're goal oriented, but they have to be grounded in experience. And so I hope that this tip will help you in your future coaching conversations, your future potentially transformational conversations out into the future, so that you can be more effective as a coach, as a communicator with others, as well as with yourself when you're self-coaching. So kind of a niche piece of advice here. Of course, this will be most relevant if you are somewhat experienced as a coach, or maybe you're aspiring to be a coach, and this might be something that you can run into early on in your career and save you a little bit of confusion, a little bit of overwhelm, and allow you to be a lot more laser focused in guiding your clients to achieving the results that are most important to them. So again, I hope you found this video valuable. My name is Jason Schneider. I love teaching, coaching, and self-actualization skills for people to unleash the highest and best of human potential, starting with yourself. And if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section around here. I'm happy to support you and along your journey. And I hope to see you in the comment section in a future video, and potentially in a future course.